Part 4. Lifelong Learning and Kaizen. The master gardener never graduates from apprenticeship to the soil, discovering that each season reveals new mysteries about growth's ancient wisdom, and that the deepest satisfaction emerges not from achieving expertise, but from maintaining the beginner's wonder that makes every small improvement a celebration of what remains possible. There exists a moment in every master gardener's journey when they realize that expertise involves not the accumulation of techniques or acquisition of rare specimens, but rather the development of an intimate, ever-deepening relationship with the fundamental processes that create and sustain life. The master approaches each season with beginner's mind, observing how weather patterns affect familiar plants in unexpected ways, discovering how changing soil composition requires adjustments to established practices, learning how light, moisture, and nutrients interact in ways previously unnoticed. This ongoing apprenticeship to growth's mysteries generates satisfaction that external recognition cannot provide. It emerges from knowing you engage in worthy work that serves purposes larger than personal achievement, from developing capabilities that enable increasingly generous contribution, from building confidence through skills earned rather than borrowed from others' expertise. You have established sustainable infrastructure for conscious living through daily practices that create reliable access to conscious choice, environmental architecture that supports authentic expression, and alignment with natural cycles that prevent exhaustion from fighting your own nature. Now begins the lifelong adventure of cultivation that transforms these foundations into ever-expanding capacities for learning, improvement, and contribution that deepen rather than diminish life satisfaction. This part explores how competence breeds confidence, confidence enables generous contribution, and generous contribution creates deep satisfaction that external achievement cannot provide. Learning becomes practice of self-respect and service rather than comparison and competition, while continuous improvement serves contentment cultivation rather than productivity optimization. The eternal student. Lifelong learning is natural human development. The master gardener never ceases to learn from the soil, understanding that each season reveals new mysteries about the profound intelligence that governs all growth. True wisdom emerges not from accumulating facts, but from deepening relationship with the living systems that create and sustain all existence. In the quiet morning hours of an ancient monastery garden, Brother Thomas tends his plot with the same wonder he brought to this work 40 years ago. His weathered hands move with practiced efficiency, yet his eyes hold the curiosity of a child discovering the world for the first time. Each plant teaches him something new about the intricate relationships between soil chemistry and root health, between seasonal light patterns and flowering cycles, between the visible garden and the invisible web of microorganisms that make all life possible. Yet Brother Thomas's deepest learning has emerged not from seasons of abundance, but from years when drought threatened everything he had cultivated, when unexpected frost destroyed months of careful work, when diseases swept through his most cherished plants. These difficulties taught lessons unavailable during comfortable times: how resilience develops through adaptation rather than protection, how apparent failure often contains seeds of breakthrough understanding, how wisdom emerges precisely through engaging with what initially seems to threaten our carefully constructed plans. To the casual observer, Brother Thomas appears to be doing the same work he has done for decades. Yet closer attention reveals a man engaged in continuous discovery across multiple dimensions of knowing. His hands carry decades of embodied knowledge about soil texture and plant health that no book could convey. His intuition guides planting decisions through subtle awareness of weather patterns and seasonal timing. His contemplative practice transforms routine tasks into opportunities for profound presence and inner stillness. This monastically inspired approach to learning embodies what contemporary research reveals as the most fundamental aspect of human flourishing: the capacity for continued growth in understanding throughout the entire lifespan that encompasses not only cognitive development, but the integration of somatic wisdom, intuitive insight, creative expression, and contemplative awareness that transforms ordinary experience into profound education. Your own development operates according to these same principles of multidimensional discovery, where authentic learning serves not merely practical skill acquisition, but the magnificent human capacity to understand yourself, others, and the natural world through every available channel of awareness, creating wisdom that emerges when different ways of knowing integrate into coherent understanding that guides both daily choices and life direction. Learning as fundamental life force across all dimensions. Contemporary neuroscience reveals that human brains remain capable of forming new neural connections throughout the entire lifespan, with Dr. Michael Merzenich groundbreaking research on neuroplasticity demonstrating that cognitive abilities can actually improve with age when the brain remains actively engaged in challenging learning experiences. Yet this represents only one dimension of the learning capacity that distinguishes human development from other species. Research by neuroscientist Antonio Damasio on embodied cognition reveals how the body processes and stores information in ways that complement but differ significantly from purely mental learning. Your nervous system contains more neurons in the gut than in the spinal cord, creating what scientists call the enteric nervous system that processes complex information about safety, nourishment, and environmental conditions through somatic intelligence that operates faster than conscious thought. This embodied knowing manifests when you enter a room and immediately sense tension despite everyone appearing calm, when your body responds with contraction to certain people before your mind identifies specific reasons for concern, or when physical practices like yoga, martial arts, or dance generate insights about balance, flow, and presence that intellectual study alone cannot provide. Learning to trust and develop this somatic intelligence creates access to wisdom that purely cognitive approaches often miss. Creative learning represents another crucial dimension often overlooked in traditional education. Cognitive scientist Douglas Hofstadter's research on creativity reveals how artistic expression, musical improvisation, and creative problem-solving access neural networks unavailable through analytical thinking alone. The painter discovering new color relationships, the musician finding unexpected melodic possibilities, or the poet uncovering precise language for previously inexpressible experience demonstrates how creativity serves learning rather than mere self-expression. When approached as learning practice rather than performance, creative activities reveal insights about pattern recognition, emotional intelligence, and innovative thinking applicable far beyond artistic domains. The businessman who takes up pottery discovers principles about patience and adaptation that transform his leadership approach, while the retired teacher who begins painting develops visual perception and present moment awareness that enhances all her relationships. Contemplative knowing through practices like meditation, prayer, or silent reflection develops capacities for inner listening and subtle awareness that complement rather than compete with intellectual understanding. Dr. Sarah Lazar's neuroscience research at Massachusetts General Hospital demonstrates how contemplative practices literally thicken brain regions associated with attention, sensory processing, and emotional regulation, while reducing areas linked to anxiety and stress response. Yet the deepest value of contemplative learning lies not in brain changes, but in developing access to wisdom that emerges through stillness rather than analysis. The insights that arise during walking meditation, the clarity that develops through journal writing, or the profound understanding that emerges during periods of grief or transition often provide guidance more reliable than purely rational decision-making processes. Perhaps most significantly, humans possess unique capacity for collective intelligence, where groups can know things that individuals cannot discover alone. MIT researcher Peter Senge's work on learning organizations reveals how teams can develop shared understanding that exceeds the sum of individual knowledge, while indigenous councils and wisdom traditions demonstrate how collective discernment creates decisions that serve multiple generations rather than immediate interests. This collective learning dimension becomes increasingly crucial as contemporary challenges require integrated solutions that no single perspective can provide. Climate change, social inequality, and technological disruption demand collaborative wisdom that draws from multiple cultural traditions, disciplines, and ways of knowing to create responses adequate to complexity that individual expertise cannot address. The sacred territory of self-knowledge through multiple lenses. Self-knowledge represents perhaps the most profound learning laboratory available to any human being. Yet conventional introspection captures only one dimension of the endless complexity available for investigation. Your inner landscape contains psychological, emotional, somatic, creative, and spiritual dimensions that reward systematic exploration with insights applicable to understanding others and navigating life's challenges with increasing skillfulness. Traditional self-observation involves witnessing your habitual patterns of thinking, feeling, and responding without immediate judgment or attempts at modification. Yet somatic self-awareness adds crucial information unavailable through mental observation alone. Your body provides continuous feedback about which experiences create expansion versus contraction, which relationships generate energy versus depletion, which environments support versus diminish your authentic expression. Dr. Peter Levine's research on somatic experiencing reveals how the nervous system stores information about safety, threat, and resilience in ways that conscious memory cannot access. Learning to read your body's subtle signals, the slight shoulder tension when certain topics arise, the belly relaxation when you encounter genuine safety, the energetic shift when you align with authentic values, provides navigation guidance more reliable than purely mental analysis. Creative self-exploration through art, music, movement, or writing often reveals aspects of personality and understanding that verbal processing cannot access. Julia Cameron's work on creative recovery demonstrates how artistic practices bypass psychological defenses to reveal authentic desires, suppressed talents, and innovative solutions to persistent life challenges. The person who begins drawing discovers visual thinking capabilities that transform their problem-solving approach, while someone who takes up drumming might access rhythmic intelligence that improves their sense of timing in relationships and work. These creative practices serve self-knowledge by revealing multidimensional capabilities that conventional personality assessment often overlooks. Perhaps most significantly, learning about yourself through difficulty and adversity provides insights unavailable during comfortable periods. Research by psychologists Richard Tedeschi and Lawrence Calhoun on post-traumatic growth reveals how challenging experiences often catalyze wisdom development, spiritual deepening, and relationship appreciation that comfortable circumstances rarely generate. The Japanese art of kintsukuroi, repairing broken pottery with golden lacquer, embodies this principle by highlighting rather than hiding places where damage occurred, creating beauty through integration rather than concealment of difficulty. Your own challenging experiences, when approached as learning opportunities rather than failures to overcome, often become sources of compassion, resilience, and authentic strength that smooth paths cannot provide. The loss of a relationship teaches lessons about attachment, independence, and love's true nature that successful relationships might never reveal. Career setbacks can catalyze clarity about authentic values and meaningful work that steady advancement might obscure. Health challenges often generate appreciation for life's preciousness and insight about what truly matters that perfect health takes for granted. This learning through adversity requires what Zen teacher Pema Chodron calls staying with the broken heart, the willingness to remain present with difficulty long enough to extract its wisdom rather than moving immediately toward resolution or distraction. Such presence with pain demands tremendous courage, but often yields understanding unavailable through any other means. Understanding others through universal patterns and cultural wisdom. The deep self-knowledge that emerges through multidimensional inner exploration creates foundation for understanding others with unprecedented compassion and insight. Recognizing how the same fundamental human needs, fears, and aspirations express themselves through infinite cultural variations while remaining essentially universal across time and circumstance. Yet understanding others requires moving beyond projecting your own patterns onto different people toward developing what anthropologists call cultural humility, the recognition that your ways of thinking, feeling, and organizing experience represent only one possibility among countless valid approaches to human existence. Traditional cultures often possess sophisticated frameworks for understanding human nature that Western psychology has only recently begun to appreciate. The African concept of Ubuntu, I am because we are, reveals how individual identity emerges through community relationship in ways that individualistic cultures struggle to comprehend. Indigenous medicine wheels provide maps for understanding personality, life cycles, and human development that integrate spiritual, psychological, and ecological wisdom. Traditional Chinese medicine's understanding of emotional patterns as related to organ systems offers insights about how grief affects the lungs, worry impacts the spleen, and fear weakens the kidneys in ways that suggest practical approaches to emotional healing through physical care. Ayurvedic concepts of different constitutional types, doshas, provide frameworks for understanding why people respond differently to foods, environments, and social situations. These traditional knowledge systems demonstrate how different cultures have developed sophisticated understanding of human nature through centuries of careful observation and experimentation. Rather than viewing such systems as primitive or unscientific, contemporary learning involves integrating traditional wisdom with modern research to develop more complete understanding than either approach provides alone. Learning from marginalized communities offers particularly valuable perspectives often overlooked by mainstream culture. People who navigate life as minorities develop sophisticated skills for reading social dynamics, managing multiple identities, and finding creative solutions to systemic obstacles that majority culture members rarely need to develop. Children possess natural wisdom about wonder, play, and authentic expression that adults often lose through socialization, while elderly people carry perspective about life priorities, meaning, and adaptation that younger generations cannot develop through study alone. Individuals who have survived addiction, mental illness, or other stigmatized experiences often develop insights about human resilience, transformation, and the nature of suffering that conventional success stories cannot provide. The key to learning from diverse perspectives lies in what Buddhist teacher Suzuki Roshi called beginner's mind, approaching others with genuine curiosity rather than assumptions based on your own experience. This requires temporarily setting aside your own cultural conditioning to create space for discovering how reality appears through different eyes, often revealing creative solutions to problems that seemed intractable from limited viewpoints. Such learning demands distinguishing between cultural practices that deserve respect and behaviors that cause genuine harm, developing discernment that honors diversity while maintaining ethical boundaries. This nuanced approach prevents both cultural relativism that excuses harmful practices and cultural imperialism that imposes single standards without considering context. Learning through deep questions and contemplative inquiry, perhaps the most transformative dimension of lifelong learning, involves developing capacity to live with profound questions rather than seeking immediate answers, recognizing how the quality of questions determines the depth of understanding that becomes possible over time. Great questions function like seeds that germinate slowly, generating insights through patient contemplation rather than analytical problem solving. The ancient Greek concept of aporia, productive confusion that arises when familiar assumptions prove inadequate, represents the fertile state that precedes breakthrough understanding. When you encounter questions that cannot be answered through existing knowledge, the mind must expand beyond current frameworks to accommodate new possibilities, creating conditions where genuine learning becomes inevitable. Existential questions like, what does it mean to live authentically? Or, how can individual freedom serve collective welfare? Cannot be answered definitively, but provide ongoing guidance for life choices when approached as living inquiries rather than intellectual problems. Such questions mature and deepen through experience, generating increasingly sophisticated understanding that serves decision-making without requiring final resolution. The Sufi tradition of spiritual questioning demonstrates how contemplative inquiry can transform entire life direction through persistent engagement with profound themes. Questions like, what is the beloved calling forth in me? Or how does my heart want to serve? Generate responses that emerge through experience rather than analysis, creating alignment between daily actions and deeper purpose that rational planning alone rarely achieves. Contemporary neuroscience research by Dr. John Kaunios on insight and creative breakthrough reveals how breakthrough understanding often emerges during relaxed states when the mind stops actively trying to solve problems. This research explains why profound insights often arise during walks, showers, or quiet reflection, rather than during intensive analytical effort. Creating optimal conditions for insight involves what researchers call diffuse attention, allowing the mind to wander freely while maintaining gentle focus on important questions, enabling unconscious processing that can connect seemingly unrelated information into new patterns of understanding. The practice of contemplative questioning involves formulating personally meaningful questions and returning to them regularly during quiet reflection, walking meditation, or journal writing, allowing responses to emerge organically rather than forcing premature answers. Over time, such questions become internal guidance systems that inform choices and generate clarity about direction without requiring complete certainty about outcomes. Different types of questions serve different learning purposes. Analytical questions gather information and solve practical problems. Experiential questions guide attention toward direct investigation of present moment experience. Existential questions explore meaning and purpose, while creative questions open possibilities for innovation and artistic expression. Learning to formulate better questions becomes a crucial skill for lifelong development, determining whether inquiry leads toward greater understanding or merely confirms existing assumptions. Questions that begin with how might or what would it look like if invite creative exploration, while questions starting with why do others often generate judgment rather than genuine understanding. Discovering natural intelligence and traditional ecological wisdom. Beyond the fascinating complexity of human psychology lies an even vaster learning laboratory, the natural world itself, where billions of years of evolutionary experimentation have created solutions to survival challenges that inspire technological innovation while revealing principles of organization, adaptation, and resilience applicable to human challenges at every scale. Yet learning from nature requires moving beyond merely copying biological mechanisms toward developing what indigenous traditions call ecological consciousness, deep awareness of the intricate interdependence that sustains all life on Earth. Recognizing how individual well-being depends entirely on collective ecosystem health. Traditional ecological knowledge systems developed by indigenous peoples through centuries of careful observation offer sophisticated understanding of natural cycles, plant medicine, sustainable resource management, and the spiritual dimensions of human-nature relationship that modern science has only recently begun to appreciate. Native American traditions of learning from animal teachers, Aboriginal Australian concepts of country as living system providing guidance and identity, and Amazonian plant spirit medicine practices demonstrate how indigenous cultures develop profound ecological wisdom through direct relationship with natural systems rather than detached scientific study. Such traditional knowledge reveals how human learning can extend far beyond human-to-human transmission toward receiving instruction directly from natural systems themselves. The Lakota practice of vision questing involves spending days alone in wilderness or to receive guidance from the land itself, while traditional Chinese medicine developed through careful observation of how natural phenomena affect human physiology and consciousness. Modern biomimicry research demonstrates how natural systems provide blueprints for sustainable technology and efficient design that human engineering attempts to replicate. Yet indigenous approaches suggest learning from nature in ways that encompass not only mechanical innovation, but wisdom about living in sustainable relationship with ecological systems that support all life. Permaculture principles developed by Bill Mollison and David Holmgren represent contemporary attempts to integrate traditional ecological wisdom with modern understanding, creating agricultural and social systems that work with rather than against natural processes. These approaches demonstrate how human communities can enhance rather than degrade ecological health while meeting practical needs for food, shelter, and meaningful work. The contemplative practice of nature observation develops what researchers call naturalist intelligence, capacity to recognize patterns, relationships, and subtle changes in natural systems that provide information about ecosystem health and seasonal cycles. Such skills prove increasingly crucial as climate change requires human communities to adapt quickly to changing environmental conditions. Spending extended time in wild places without artificial distractions reconnects you with sensory awareness and present moment attention that urban environments often diminish, restoring access to intuitive intelligence that complements analytical thinking while providing direct experience of the peace and wonder that emerge when human consciousness aligns with natural rhythms. Intergenerational learning and cultural wisdom transmission. One of the most significant learning opportunities available in human communities involves the transmission of wisdom across generations, where different life stages offer unique perspectives that complement rather than compete with each other in creating comprehensive understanding of human experience. Traditional cultures developed sophisticated systems for intergenerational learning that recognized how children, adults, and elders each contribute essential knowledge to community well-being. Children provide natural wisdom about wonder, creativity, and authentic expression that adults often lose through socialization, while elders carry perspective about life priorities, adaptation strategies, and long-term consequences that younger generations cannot develop through study alone. The African tradition of storytelling as wisdom transmission demonstrates how narrative learning can convey complex understanding about human nature, ethical choice-making, and cultural values in ways that direct instruction cannot match. Stories embed practical wisdom within memorable narratives that provide guidance for similar situations, while allowing listeners to discover relevant applications rather than receiving prescriptive advice. Indigenous apprenticeship models created learning relationships between master crafters and novice students that transmitted not only technical skills, but cultural values, spiritual understanding, and deep knowledge about working with natural materials and seasonal cycles that formal education systems struggle to replicate. Contemporary research on successful aging reveals how individuals who remain engaged in learning and teaching throughout their lives experience better physical health, cognitive function, and life satisfaction compared to those who view retirement as cessation of growth and contribution. The Japanese concept of ikigai, life purpose that continues throughout all life stages, demonstrates how meaning emerges through ongoing engagement with learning and service rather than achievement and accumulation. Yet modern culture often segregates age groups in ways that prevent natural intergenerational learning, creating what anthropologist Margaret Mead called generational discontinuity, where rapid technological and social change makes older wisdom seem irrelevant while depriving younger people of time-tested insights about human nature and life management. Rebuilding intergenerational learning requires creating opportunities for meaningful interaction across age groups that honor what each generation offers, while avoiding both ageist dismissal of elder wisdom and patronizing idealization of youth perspectives. Successful programs often involve collaborative projects where different age groups contribute complementary capabilities toward shared goals. The practice of learning from those much older or younger than yourself develops humility about your own generational limitations while expanding access to perspectives shaped by different historical periods, technological environments, and cultural assumptions. Such learning requires genuine curiosity rather than attempting to teach or correct across generational differences. The neuroscience of breakthrough understanding and insight development. Contemporary research on creativity and insight reveals fascinating information about how breakthrough understanding actually occurs in the brain, suggesting practical approaches for creating optimal conditions for the aha moments that transform both individual learning and collective knowledge development. Dr. John Cunios's research using brain imaging technology reveals that insight experiences involve different neural networks than analytical problem solving, with breakthrough understanding emerging through sudden reorganization of existing information rather than gradual accumulation of new facts. These eureka moments appear to require periods of unconscious processing that occur when conscious attention relaxes its focus on specific problems. This research explains why profound insights often arise during the activities like walking, showering, or quiet reflection rather than during intensive study, and why creative breakthroughs frequently emerge after periods of apparent non-productivity that actually represent necessary incubation phases for unconscious processing. The default mode network, discovered through brain imaging studies of resting consciousness, appears to play crucial roles in connecting disparate information into new patterns of understanding. When external attention decreases, this network becomes active in ways that can generate creative connections between previously unrelated experiences, memories, and knowledge. Creating optimal conditions for insight development involves what researchers call prepared mind states that combine deep knowledge about specific domains with relaxed attention that allows unconscious processing to occur. This suggests learning approaches that alternate between focused study periods and diffuse attention phases that enable integration of new information with existing understanding. The practice of regular periods of mental rest, through activities like walking meditation, creative expression, or simply allowing the mind to wander, appears essential for breakthrough understanding rather than mere relaxation. Such practices provide space for the unconscious processing that transforms information into wisdom through pattern recognition that analytical thinking cannot achieve. Research on flow, states by Mihaly Csikszentmihalyi, reveals how optimal learning experiences occur when challenge level perfectly matches skill development, creating conditions where absorption becomes so complete that self-consciousness disappears while learning accelerates dramatically. These flow experiences appear to facilitate the kind of deep learning that creates lasting transformation, rather than mere information acquisition. Understanding how insight actually occurs in the brain suggests practical approaches to lifelong learning that honor both focused effort and receptive allowance, creating rhythms that support breakthrough understanding rather than forcing learning through willpower alone. Metacognitive mastery, learning how to learn throughout life. Perhaps the most crucial skill for lifelong development involves developing sophisticated awareness of your own learning processes, what educators call metacognition, enabling you to recognize what helps versus hinders your understanding while adapting learning approaches to different subjects, life stages, and changing circumstances. Individual learning styles vary dramatically based on personality factors, cultural background, and neurological differences that affect how information is best received, processed, and integrated. Some people learn most effectively through visual input, others through auditory instruction, while kinesthetic learners require physical movement and hands-on experience to develop understanding. Yet learning style assessment represents only one dimension of learning optimization. Attention span, energy cycles, social versus solitary preferences, competitive versus collaborative orientations, and preferred challenge levels all affect how learning can be optimized for sustainable motivation and effective retention. The ability to recognize and overcome learning blocks represents crucial metacognitive skill, often overlooked in traditional education. Psychological resistance to learning often stems from perfectionist fears about making mistakes, past educational trauma that created anxiety around intellectual challenge, or cultural messages about intelligence that interfere with natural curiosity and experimentation. Learning to identify these internal obstacles while developing self-compassionate approaches to working through them prevents the self-criticism and discouragement that often derail adult learning efforts. Research by Carol Dweck on growth mindset reveals how beliefs about intelligence significantly affect learning outcomes, with people who view abilities as developable achieving better results than those who believe intelligence is fixed. Memory enhancement techniques developed through cognitive research can significantly improve retention and recall throughout the aging process. The method of loci, used by ancient Greek orators, spaced repetition systems that optimize review timing, and elaborative interrogation techniques that connect new information with existing knowledge, all demonstrate how understanding memory processes can improve learning efficiency. Attention training through mindfulness practices, cognitive behavioral techniques, and environmental design can enhance focus and concentration in ways that support deeper engagement with challenging material. Creating optimal learning environments that minimize distractions while providing appropriate stimulation and comfort becomes increasingly important for sustained learning throughout life. Perhaps most importantly, developing learning resilience through approaches that frame mistakes as information, setbacks as temporary challenges, and confusion as natural parts of growth prevents the discouragement that often stops adult learning efforts before breakthrough understanding can occur. Integration of ancient wisdom and contemporary science. One of the most exciting frontiers in lifelong learning involves the integration of traditional wisdom practices with contemporary scientific understanding, revealing how ancient insights about human nature, consciousness, development, and optimal living align remarkably with modern research findings. Contemplative practices developed over centuries in various spiritual traditions are now validated through neuroscience research that demonstrates their effectiveness for developing attention, emotional regulation, and stress resilience. Buddhist mindfulness meditation, shown through brain imaging to strengthen areas associated with focused attention while reducing anxiety-related activation, provides scientifically validated approaches to mental training that contemplative traditions discovered through direct experience. Traditional Chinese medicine's understanding of health as dynamic balance between opposing forces, yin or yang, resonates with contemporary systems medicine that views wellness as emerging from complex interactions between genetic, environmental, and lifestyle factors rather than simple cause and effect relationships. Indigenous plant medicine traditions that develop sophisticated understanding of psychoactive substances for healing and spiritual development are now being validated through clinical research on substances like psilocybin and ayahuasca for treating depression, PTSD, and addiction in ways that conventional pharmaceuticals often cannot match. The integration of ancient and modern approaches requires careful discernment that avoids both naive acceptance of traditional claims without scientific validation and dismissive rejection of practices that don't fit current scientific paradigms. The most productive approach involves respectful investigation that honors both traditional wisdom and scientific rigor, while remaining open to expanding current understanding through encounter with different ways of knowing. This integration becomes particularly valuable for understanding consciousness, meaning-making, and optimal human development, areas where traditional wisdom often provides sophisticated insights that purely materialistic science struggles to address adequately. The dialogue between contemplative traditions and neuroscience, for example, is generating new understanding of how consciousness relates to brain function that neither approach could develop alone. Learning to navigate this integration requires developing what researcher Ken Wilber calls integral thinking, the capacity to include valid insights from multiple perspectives without forcing artificial synthesis or ignoring genuine contradictions that may indicate areas where understanding remains incomplete. Learning through service and the wisdom of teaching. Perhaps the most transformative dimension of lifelong learning emerges when individual development begins serving purposes larger than personal enhancement, discovering how teaching others deepens your own understanding while creating collaborative learning communities that benefit everyone involved. The ancient saying, "The best way to learn is to teach," reflects profound psychological truth validated by contemporary educational research. When you attempt to explain concepts to others, gaps in your own understanding become immediately apparent, while the process of translation requires deeper comprehension than passive learning typically achieves. Teaching also develops different cognitive capabilities than learning alone, requiring skills in pattern recognition, adaptive communication, and creative explanation that enhance your own thinking while serving others' development. The parent helping a child with homework often rediscovers mathematical concepts with adult perspective that reveals applications invisible during their own school years. Mentoring relationships create mutual learning opportunities where experience and fresh perspective combine to generate insights neither participant could achieve independently. The seasoned professional sharing career wisdom with younger colleagues often discovers new approaches to familiar challenges, while novice questions reveal assumptions that experience had made invisible. Service learning that addresses community needs while developing personal capabilities demonstrates how individual growth and collective contribution enhance each other when properly structured. Environmental restoration projects teach ecological principles through direct application, while tutoring programs develop teaching skills while addressing educational inequity. The transformation from learning for personal benefit toward learning that serves others represents spiritual maturation that generates meaning unavailable through self-focused development alone. When learning serves purposes larger than individual enhancement, the process itself becomes intrinsically rewarding while building capabilities that contribute to collective wisdom and community resilience. Cosmic perspective and the ultimate questions. The ultimate frontier of lifelong learning involves developing what astronomers call Cosmic perspective, the capacity to comprehend your existence within the vast scales of time and space that scientific discovery continues revealing, while finding meaning and purpose within this profound context rather than feeling diminished by cosmic immensity. Yet cosmic perspective requires integration with what contemplative traditions call ultimate questions, fundamental inquiries about existence, consciousness, and purpose that have no final answers accessible to human understanding but provide profound guidance for living when approached as ongoing contemplation, rather than intellectual problems requiring solution. Questions like, why does anything exist rather than nothing? Or how does consciousness emerge from matter? Inspire wonder and investigation rather than anxiety about knowledge limitations when approached from mature spiritual perspective that finds peace within mystery rather than demanding certainty about ultimately unknowable dimensions of existence. These ultimate questions often serve as organizing principles for lifelong learning, providing direction for study and contemplation that connects personal development with cosmic purposes while maintaining humility about the vastness that exceeds individual comprehension. The scientist investigating consciousness, the artist expressing ineffable beauty, or the contemplative exploring the nature of awareness all participate in cosmic inquiry through their chosen domains. Contemporary physics reveals a universe far more mysterious and interconnected than previous generations imagined, with quantum entanglement suggesting that separation between phenomena may be more apparent than real, while consciousness appears to play fundamental roles in physical reality that materialistic assumptions cannot adequately explain. This scientific recognition of cosmic mystery resonates with wisdom traditions that have always recognized individual consciousness as expression of universal intelligence rather than separate phenomena, whether described through Buddhist interdependence, Hindu concepts of cosmic consciousness, or indigenous understanding of all life as sacred expressions of unified creative force. Developing comfortable relationship with ultimate mystery represents spiritual maturity that finds profound peace within questions that inspire rather than torment, enabling continued learning and development without requiring final answers that may exceed human cognitive capacity, while still providing guidance for choices that serve both individual authenticity and collective evolution. Integration practice, the complete curriculum of lifelong wonder, daily multidimensional learning. Each morning set specific intentions for learning that encompass different ways of knowing. This might involve intellectual curiosity about a particular subject, somatic awareness of how your body responds to different experiences, creative expression through art or music, and contemplative inquiry through meaningful questions that provide ongoing guidance. Track these varied learning approaches to discover which combinations generate the most insight and satisfaction. Developing personalized approaches to multidimensional development that honor your unique learning style while expanding beyond familiar territories into new dimensions of understanding. Weekly wisdom integration. Through questions, dedicate time each week to living with profound questions rather than seeking immediate answers. Develop personally meaningful inquiries like, how does my work serve purposes larger than personal success? Or, what is my unique contribution to the healing the world needs? That mature through experience rather than analysis. Practice different types of questioning. Analytical questions for practical problem solving, experiential questions for present moment investigation, existential questions for meaning exploration, and creative questions for innovative possibility. Notice how different questions generate different qualities of insight and life direction. Monthly cross-cultural and intergenerational learning. Seek regular opportunities to learn from people whose background, or perspective differs significantly from your own. This might involve reading authors from different cultures, seeking mentorship from elders in areas where you lack experience, or finding ways to learn from children's natural wisdom about wonder and authenticity. Practice approaching these encounters with genuine beginner's mind rather than attempting to teach or correct, allowing different perspectives to expand your understanding while maintaining discernment between insights worth integrating and approaches that don't serve your authentic development. Seasonal integration with natural cycle. Align learning activities with seasonal rhythms, using winter for contemplative study and inner reflection, spring for new skill development and creative projects, summer for active learning through travel and social interaction, and autumn for integration and wisdom synthesis that transforms experience into practical guidance. Spend regular time in natural settings without artificial distractions, practicing the kind of patient observation that indigenous traditions use to develop ecological wisdom, while allowing natural cycles to teach you about patience, adaptation, and the profound intelligence that orchestrates growth according to principles beyond human control. Annual learning review and intention setting. Each year, evaluate learning across all dimensions: intellectual, emotional, somatic, creative, contemplative, and service-oriented, identifying patterns and gaps while setting intentions for a continued development that serves both personal authenticity and collective contribution. Consider how different life stages offer unique learning opportunities, approaching aging as continued development rather than decline, while maintaining beginner's mind that prevents established knowledge from blocking access to fresh insights and breakthrough understanding. The cultivation of lifelong learning as natural human development creates sustainable foundation for wisdom that serves both personal fulfillment and collective benefit. When curiosity about existence itself motivates development rather than external pressure or competitive advantage, learning becomes intrinsically rewarding while building understanding that deepens rather than diminishes life satisfaction. Through consistent attention to the endless mysteries available within yourself, others, natural systems, cultural traditions, and cosmic context, learning transforms from something you do into something you are, a conscious participant in the universe's ongoing process of knowing itself through human experience, contributing your unique perspective to the accumulated wisdom available to all life, while continuing to discover new dimensions of understanding that serve both individual flourishing and the evolution of consciousness itself.